Good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. The government's Central Database Hub, or PADU, is 60% complete and on track for a January 2024 launch. Economy Minister Rafizi Ramli said the government will test PADU in November before allowing it to be used by the public in January to verify personal information.
We've managed to reach 60%. I have to say it's actually challenging. Muka kita orang pucat sebenarnya untuk bring it up running untuk January. But I think we take comfort lah within 2 months plus in terms of what it needs to be done for January is 60%. So inshallah in the next 3 months we will be able to pull it off lah.
PADU will form a database of 32 million Malaysians. Rafizi said it will ensure those who are eligible for subsidies or other government assistance will not slip through the cracks, as well as pay attention to groups that are at risk of dropping out of social safety nets. Rafizi added that the government will also table an omnibus bill next year to authorize data sharing between ministries and agencies for a smoother data sharing process.
Malaysians will soon enjoy much cheaper broadband internet prices after the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission (MCMC) concludes its talks with wholesale broadband service providers. Though discussions have taken some time, Communications and Digital Minister Fahmi Fadzil had requested for discussion to be completed by next week.
Saya difahamkan pihak MCMC sedang dalam fasa terakhir perbincangan dengan syarikat-syarikat penyedia perkhidmatan borong bagi internet jalur lebar, wholesale broadband service provider, dan saya minta supaya perbincangan ini ditamatkan minggu depan sebelum akhir bulan September, dan ia akan diikuti dengan majlis tanda tangan semua syarikat-syarikat penyedia perkhidmatan internet jalur lebar peringkat borong, wholesale, dan selepas itu saya percaya harga internet jalur lebar akan berkurangan dengan agak signifikan.
Fahmi added that inflation, particularly in the telecommunications sector, has also been successfully tackled. Citing the latest data from the Department of Statistics Malaysia, he said the current rate of inflation in telecommunications is at negative 3.7%. Separately, Fahmi said the 5G network coverage in Malaysia is expected to expand to 80% by the end of the year. As of the end of July, the 5G network coverage had reached 66.8%. Malaysia has expressed its willingness to purchase military equipment from Turkey. Prime Minister Dato' Sri Ibrahim said the Malaysian Armed Forces Council will decide what to purchase from Turkey. He said some of Malaysia's military equipment had been purchased from South Korea previously. The Prime Minister explained that the purchases would be decided depending on Turkey's specialty, including drones and helicopters. Anwar, who is in New York to attend the 78th session of the UN General Assembly, said it was up to the Defence Ministry to hold negotiations with the Finance Ministry and the Turkish government on the purchases. Anwar said this after a bilateral meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the Turkish House on Wednesday. He added that Erdogan has also agreed to visit Malaysia in December. Selangor residents will now be able to purchase every 5-kilogram bag of rice for 13 ringgit in light of the recent hike in rice prices. Menteri Besar Dato' Sri Amiruddin Syari says the sale will be implemented through the State Agriculture Development Corporation (PKPS) at 4 of its outlets.
PKPS would also hold mobile sales at 3 locations daily until December. Amiruddin added that the supply of local white rice in Selangor, which requires 45,500 metric tons of rice per month, was sufficient until the end of the month. Following this, he reiterated that supply would stabilize from October as rice production in the northern states of the peninsula resumes and Selangor also commences harvest.
Employers have the autonomy to make decisions regarding the hiring of foreign workers, even though the government, in principle, gives priority to local workers, says Human Resources Minister V. Sivakumar. Employers, he adds, would decide the selection of workers and source country based on their suitability to the nature of a particular industry. In a statement, he said that the employment of foreign workers in Malaysia is subject to demand from employers and is based on criteria determined by the government according to the needs of various sectors. Sivakumar was commenting on a recent news portal report that he said led to a misconception surrounding the employment of foreign workers as it reflects negatively on the processes and procedures. In an FMT report on Wednesday, a migrant rights activist expressed concern about the rapid pace Bangladeshi workers were coming into Malaysia, claiming that many were unable to find jobs after being brought to the country by syndicates. The report said more than 300,000 Bangladeshis entered Malaysia in less than 2 years, with many trapped in modern slavery due to debt bondage from excessive recruitment costs. To date, Malaysia has 14 other source countries besides Bangladesh for employers to choose from in employing foreign workers. No house buyer should be forced to pay for additional packages offered by developers of affordable homes, says Chow Kon Yeow. The Penang Chief Minister said such packages should be optional, as the prices for affordable housing units are fixed by the state government. Kon Yeow said developers must only sell the units according to the fixed prices and not force buyers to take up additional renovation or car park lot packages and set them as a condition for qualified applicants in the affordable housing program. According to him, the cost of a low-cost housing unit is now 150,000 ringgit, but it is being sold way below the price as it is heavily subsidized. Previously, Penang Parti Rakyat Malaysia PRM Vice Chairperson Ravinder Singh had claimed that some developers refuse to sell state government housing program units at a fixed price, compelling purchasers to sign up for renovation packages. Kon Yeow said the state government received complaints from buyers from time to time, but stressed that any deal should be a win-win for both buyer and seller. Meanwhile, the police are tracking down the person who sent an email claiming that there was a bomb at the Bank Negara Malaysia building yesterday. Kuala Lumpur Police Chief Dato' Alauddin Abdul Majid says the police are working with the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, MCMC, and Cybersecurity Malaysia on the matter.
In the incident at 3 p.m. on Wednesday, a Bank Negara officer received an email informing of a bomb threat. The bomb disposal unit conducted a sweep of the area, and after 2 hours of investigation, it was determined that the threat was false and the area was safe. Alauddin said an investigation under Section 507 of the Penal Code had been launched to track down the perpetrator.
We will go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda AWANI Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro AWANI.
Stars Gegar Vaganza mulai 24 September di saluran-saluran berikut.
Welcome back. Canada's High Commission in India has decided to temporarily adjust staff presence in the country after some of its diplomats received threats on social media. The statement came soon after India suspended visa services for Canadian citizens amid a diplomatic row between the two countries. Visa provider BLS International said India's mission cited operational reasons for the suspension until further notice. This came a day after India warned its citizens against visiting parts of Canada. Tensions escalated earlier this week when Canada accused New Delhi of being involved in the killing of a Sikh separatist leader near Vancouver in June. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has demanded that India treat the allegations seriously, while the Indian government rejected the former suspicions that its agents had links to the alleged murder. Venezuela says it has successfully regained control of one of its largest prisons, which had been overrun by a powerful criminal gang. Nearly 11,000 members of its security forces were deployed to regain control of the notorious Tocoron prison in the north of the country, according to the Venezuelan government. The Tocoron prison, described by the authorities as one of the most dangerous in Venezuela, had for years been the headquarters of one of the country's most powerful gangs, Tren de Aragua. Local media reported that inmates were free to move around the prison, which had hotel-like facilities including a swimming pool, nightclub and mini zoo. Many free residents also lived in the prison alongside convicted inmates, including relatives. Officials said the 6,000 inmates would be transferred to other prisons. One of Ukraine's staunchest allies, Poland, has said it will no longer supply weapons to its neighbour as a diplomatic dispute over grain escalates. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said Poland would instead focus on building up its own stockpile of weapons and ensuring its national defence.
According to Morawiecki, Poland has already sent Ukraine 320 Soviet-era tanks and 14 MiG-29 fighter jets and has little more to offer. The remarks came as a dispute about Ukrainian grain exports has pushed the tight relationship between Kiev and Warsaw to its lowest point since Russia invaded Ukraine last year. The diplomatic rift began after Poland, Hungary and Slovakia extended a ban on Ukrainian grain. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky suggested that EU allies banning imports of his country's grain were helping Russia. Poland, in response, summoned Ukraine's ambassador over Zelensky's comments.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad began his first official trip to China in nearly 2 decades, where he is expected to ask his longtime ally for financial support to help rebuild his country. China is one of the few countries outside the Middle East that Assad has visited since the start of a civil war in 2011 that has killed more than 500,000 people and devastated the country. Assad is set to attend the opening ceremony of the Asian Games and will also be leading a delegation for a series of meetings in several Chinese cities, including a summit with President Xi Jinping. Assad last visited China in 2004 to meet then-President Hu Jintao. The Syrian leader has seldom been seen outside his country since the start of the civil war. His visit is seen as an effort to improve his international standing and put an end to more than a decade of diplomatic isolation and Western sanctions over the brutal crackdown. At the same time, Beijing seeks to increase its diplomatic influence in the Middle East and partner with nations that are shunned by the United States and the West. Assad is the latest in a string of leaders ostracized by the West to be feted by Beijing, with Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi, as well as top Russian officials, all visiting this year. That wraps up AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.